Hello, everybody. So in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about how to be observant. And that's going to be very important for the next couple of weeks because you have to do observations. So I'm not going to give you pictures of things that don't have any change. So definitely, if I've given you a picture for something, um, don't put the date and then say no change. There's going to be some sort of change that has occurred in your plant material for me to even suggest that you need to put something down there. I will make sure that I include the date that the picture was taken because some of these experiments are ones that we're reusing from last year. So make sure that you're paying attention to whether it says 2020 or 2021. One really easy indicator for that is going to be if the date that is on the picture doesn't look like it's occurred yet. So some of these things were propagated on April 14th of last year. So make sure that you say that it's 2020 that it was propagated of April 14th, which um, maybe by the time you've watched this video has happened, but today actually is April 11th. So anyways, I want to just share my screen with you to show you how I learned to be observant when I was younger. And it was by using this little magazine called Highlights Magazine. My daughter actually gets these now. And in Highlights Magazine, there are often these hidden pictures, or there are the can you spot the differences kinds of pictures. So in this case, I gave you guys an image that you can look at to try to practice and train your eye. There should be 10 differences between these two images for you to spot. And usually you would either circle these or write them on the side, and then you would know what those differences were. The first one that I see here that jumps right out at me is that this sunshine has rays. This sunshine does not have any rays. So if you need to get yourself a little into the mood of how to start observing things, go ahead and practice with some of these pictures. There's really easy ones to find on the internet. Some of them only have 5 differences, some of them have 10 differences. But I would say that in general, finding differences between two pictures is a better trainer for you than to just find hidden pictures, more so than like a Where's Waldo sort of thing. Because with Where's Waldo, you're just looking for one specific thing. And so you might get fixated on that instead of looking for differences between things. Okay, now that being said, I do want to show you, here we go. Okay, so I want to show you an example of one of the ones that you're going to do this week, and we'll talk about the differences in there. So you can see in these flats, this is where we were doing the leaf cuttings for our succulent plants. We've got jade on the left, we have aloe in the middle, and snake plant on the right. And I didn't give you guys a baseline picture. We can assume for our baseline that all of these leaves were green and they were supple, like they were succulenty and they were ready to be planted. They still were quite full. So now we want to look through these things and you want to give me some observations with regard to each other. So does it look like the hormone is changing at a different rate than the control, or does it look like they're about the same? We're not quantifying this in numbers. We're just looking for differences. So I'm going to point out some differences here. You guys may find more differences than what I am giving you right now, and you will have to find your own differences for the pictures that follow. Let's just start with the jade. So on the jade, this is about where my cursor is here that I'm circling. This is about the very healthy leaf type that we would have planted, right? This one might be tipped over. You could say that, hey, some of these leaves have tipped over. That probably is had occurred from people watering. You can surmise as to why some things are happening the way they are. We're not actually going to quantify any of this until the end of the quarter, though, when we can just harvest the entire experiment. So we have some tipping. It looks like we've got some browning and shriveling. This probably looks shriveled. This one looks browned. And then there are some that are still green. You can look at this and say, maybe 25% are still green, 30% are still green. You can throw a general number at it, but make sure that you put the little squiggly, the little tilde that shows that it's an approximation or that you are doing an approximation. I don't think that you can get really accurate numbers just from these pictures. Some of the things are just kind of hidden in there. So we'll make sure that we quantify that at the end of the quarter. Over here in our control, it looks like when I'm comparing the two that we have more healthy green leaves still in the control, which is very interesting, than we have with the treated hormone. So that's what I see here as the big overarching picture is that the control appears to be healing better with respect to jade than it does on the other. But we do still see some browning, we see some shriveling, and there are some definite differences between the two. Let's take a look at the aloe next. So the aloe in general, I would say that overall they appear to be slightly more yellow than they were when we started. They were very, very rich green, kind of like this green up towards the top here, but we're starting to see yellowing at both the tips in this case and towards the bases here. I also see a little bit of browning towards the base of these, so that could indicate that there's some rot happening, which may mean maybe our soil mix is too heavy, maybe it's staying too moist. Maybe it doesn't have enough heat on the bottom, and so it's not drying that soil out at regular intervals, or maybe it's just a little bit too heavy of a mix in general. You can make that kind of, excuse me, you can make that kind of observation and give those tips if you want. At the end of the quarter, we will actually have a section where you put those kind of suggestions if something worked or something didn't work and how we can change that experiment. Lastly, let's just take a look at our snake plant. And our snake plant is the one that's probably the hardest to observe in this case. It definitely looks like at all of these points, it's very, very white on the tips, which means that it's drying out. And then I would say that they probably look a little bit more slender than when we put in there. They're probably losing a little bit of moisture. But in general, I don't think that they are losing color. So you could say there's no change in color, but you would probably want to say that they're getting a little thinner and a little drier looking in general. Okay. So that is leaf petiole cuttings. Now you guys will have to go through and do daffodil bulbs. Some of these pictures are going to be a little hard to see. It's some of these things are pretty small, so it's hard for me to get really good pictures of them. But overall, I'll give you some tips up here towards the top for what you could be looking for, and then you can go ahead and make your observations. Color is always something that you can use as a determinant. So here with our fresh ones, they looked fresher in general, right? They had a little bit more robust color. They didn't look as dry versus our hardened off ones. Those should look a little bit more dry, right? Because we had them not exposed to any water for 6 months. These ones we just pulled right out of the ground. That's just a general observation. Then go through and talk about these little pieces up here that are starting to push roots. Look at how big these roots are and how fluffy they are compared to the roots on the other side. Are there more roots on one side than the other? Those are the kinds of things you want to tell me about. Even you can look in these cuts and see like, hey, we've got a greater separation between the layers of the leaves on those cuts than we do on these ones or something like that. And then lastly, you can go ahead and do these rhododendron leaves. This was the control, and with IBA on here. They were very, very dark green when we started these cuttings, probably like this leaf here. If you see more color change happening on one side than on the other, definitely specify that. If you see that it's yellowing, where is it yellowing from? Is it yellowing from the base? Is it yellowing from the tip? Those are the kinds of things you'd want to talk about. Okay, so that's, I think, enough to get you started with it. Feel free to email me questions if you have them as they come up. But this is your time. I mean, it gets really hard to be observant when your mind is focused on so many other things. And so being observant can be kind of challenging, and you really might need to train yourself to sit down and really look hard and think deeply about these pictures to see if you can come up with solid observations that are valuable. Okay? So go for it, try it out, and I hope it goes well. And definitely feel free to email me if questions come up.